Alright, so I'm going to be telling you guys a little bit about the different types of compensation, just a little bit more into detail on what Peter and Jared were saying before. So we're going to go over the conventional types of compensation, you know, like the regular pay, overtime pay, stock options, merit pay, insurance, just a little bit more into detail on what they were saying. So the first type of compensation and the most basic that we all experience, you know, we all have a job, is going to be your base pay. So that's your regular hourly or salaried rate without any additions, no commission, no tips, no tax taken out. It's just the rate that you receive on your paycheck. So that's going to be your base pay rate, the hourly or salaried rate that's going to go on your paycheck. Something I wanted to touch on a little bit after base pay is going to be your premium pay or your overtime pay. So over the summer, I worked as a manager at Chick-fil-A, and I worked almost over 40 hours a week, and I worked on a couple of holidays. So a lot of companies will give you time and a half for working over 40 hours a week, or if you work on holidays. It's not required by law, however, to give you overtime on holidays. Next, I wanted to touch on commission. The reason I put a picture of a car salesman up there is because we've all gone to buy cars, or we've gone with our parents to buy cars, and car salesmen work off commission. We all know that. They get paid. The more they sell, the more they get paid. That's the basic principle of commission. The more you sell, the more you get paid. Something I wanted to touch on a little bit after commission is going to be bonuses. So a lot of companies will give you a Christmas bonus or a holiday bonus just to keep you working hard and to reward their employees for doing well. It's something nice. I know my company gave me a bonus last year for doing well. It's just something that companies will do to reward you and keep you working hard. Something that when I was researching the different types of compensation that I came across was profit sharing. I had no idea at first what profit sharing was. It's basically when a company shares a direct amount of its profits with its employees. So they set a certain criteria, like how much they'll share, and like a set amount of their profits go right into your paycheck. So it's a nice way of rewarding your employees directly with your profits. Another way of rewarding your employees, or the best way to reward your employees, is with merit pay. It's also called pay for performance, and basically it says, when you're hired, a company will set a certain criteria, and as you meet that criteria, your company will reward you accordingly. So as you meet the certain steps in this criteria, the company will reward you. So that's a nice way to reward your employees. Something most full-time companies or full-time employers will give is stock options. So stock options are when you have the option to buy stocks at a discounted rate from the market rate, and then you have the option to buy these stocks if you leave or if you're terminated. A lot of companies will give you the option to buy the stocks at that rate that you have them at. So it's just something, something nice to have some shares of the company. I wanted to touch on work-related travel. Once again, like I said before, I worked as a manager at Chick-fil-A, and we had an interim manager who traveled the country. His name was Kyle, and he would go to these different stores across the country and make sure they were running smoothly and to make sure they were doing well. And what was very interesting is that whenever he went to a different hotel or he had to fly somewhere, he was compensated for his travel. They compensated him for everything. He had like over 1 million Marriott points or something like that. But it's a nice way to get compensated for your work that you do outside of the workplace. It doesn't have to be necessarily inside the workplace if you need to travel for work. So on that point, I wanted to touch on vacation or leave.
Joe, can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
We're out of time. Go ahead and flip through the rest of your slides.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm Kelsey, and I'm going to be talking about the regulations of compensation. This is more like the legal aspect and kind of like how in history things came about, and how now we all have an equal opportunity to receive benefits and our compensation when we are moving on in the workforce. The next slide is going to be about the most important part of the legal legislation of compensation and benefits. It's going to be the Fair Labor Standards Act. And this act, it established minimum wage, it established what kind of hours include in a part-time and a full-time employee, and what you're going to be eligible for later on, when you are getting benefits and stuff. The Social Security Act of 1935 is also a pretty famous act that people are well known about. This kind of provides disability, and it describes benefits for victims in industrial accidents and dependent mothers and children and physically handicapped. The next slide is kind of hand in hand with Social Security. It's the old age survivors and disability and health insurance. This is a federal law that created Social Security in the United States. And for the elderly and disabled, it includes retirement and the survivor insurance in case anyone is hurt. The Federal Unemployment Tax Act, that is when if you are currently unemployed, you're still able to have benefits and receive compensation from your employer. The employer has to still pay a federal and a government tax. On the next slide, it's going to be talking about the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. This is when a legislation in the United States decided that all of your information, if you're ever admitted into a hospital or you go to a doctor's appointment, that all of your information is remained private and safe. The next slide is also pretty well known. It's the Equal Pay Act, which pretty much is self-explanatory. It's when it abolished the wage disparity between sex, so men and women are getting paid the same for doing the same job. And it was signed June 10th, 1963 by JFK as part of his New Frontier program. The next slide is going to be the EOICPA, and this is for the people, anyone a part of the Department of Energy. They're compensated for anything that's current or past employees. They're compensated under this program, and all their benefits and compensation are still lying with them. Next is the ERISA, so it's the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, and this is so when you're old enough to retire, any plan that you chose, like a 401k or anything like that, it's still